So what happens with red wine over time is it loses color, but with white wine over time, it gains color. The best reason is that cork is a natural product, so it allows parts per million of air into the wine bottle, helping it develop over age. A really cool experiment at home: pour wine into a decanter, pour a glass, and then set it aside. And then revisit this wine an hour later, and it will be totally different. So they would sometimes, on the top of the cork here, put rat poison. Hi, my name is Scott Leinster, wine director here at Mount Alverno Luxury Resorts. And we're gonna move over to the new world, where I know Chris's heart lies. This 2020 Faust from Oakville, Napa Valley, something we're gonna talk about. Come with me.
This is my favorite day of the week. This is the day that Scott, our director of wine at Mount Alverno Luxury Resorts, introduces me to either a new wine that we've added to our portfolio or a wine I haven't had a chance yet to try. So Scott, tell me what we're trying today.
Chris, I got this wine just for you. So this is the Faust 2020 vintage from Oakville, Napa Valley in California. I know how much you love your Napa Valley cabs, and you're gonna love this one specifically. Oakville and Rutherford are two regions in the Napa Valley that butt up against each other. And some of the most expensive and most coveted wines from the Napa Valley come from exactly where Faust comes from. So this is a big monster of a wine. That's great with our strip loin steak off of our list.
Wonderful.
Steak and Napa Valley cab, they go so well together. And this is no exception. I can't wait for you to taste it.
I can't wait to try it. Thanks, Scott. Scott, you know what I'm really fascinated about?
Yeah.
All the ceremony and the ritual behind wine.
Yeah.
Can you, while you're decanting and even opening the wine, explain to me what you're doing and why you're doing it and how you're doing it?
Absolutely, Chris. So a few things that you must do when you're opening up a bottle of wine in order to do it properly. First thing is to cut it. We have our enclosure right here. What you always want to do is you always want to cut below the lip of the wine. There's two reasons for this. It more comes from the olden days where wine was sealed with tin on the top. And so when you passed wine over that tin, it would change the flavor of it. Another interesting fact is that the reason why you always cut from below this is back in the day when they used to ship wine on boats around, they would have a problem with mice and rodents on the boats. And so they would sometimes, on the top of the cork here, put rat poison. And so the reason why you cut below this is that the drip never touches where the rat poison would have been. And so, interesting, very, very interesting. So first you cut off the top, exposing the whole lip and the cork itself. The next you take your corkscrew and then you drive it right down the center of the bottle, standing it up. And the reason that you want to do it in the center is you don't want that cork to break. So we're going to go all the way down until we have one revolution of your corkscrew remaining.
So Scott, tell me, why cork? There's so many different ways of sealing a bottle. What's the story behind cork?
Well, they've used cork for this specific reason for as long as we've had wine. The best reason is that cork is a natural product, so it allows parts per million of air into the wine bottle, helping it develop over age. The difference between that and like a synthetic cork or like a screw cap enclosure is that it is inert. There's no passage of air from outside to in, so it doesn't allow the wine to develop over time. The other reason is because using cork, there we go. Using cork, it expands and contracts, and so it is the best way to just seal your wine over time, allowing it to develop in your cellar. What we're looking at when you have a cork is you're looking at the color of the cork right here and making sure that it doesn't have any lines that are bleeding right down the side here. That could show maybe a sign of fault, of there being a crack, a fissure, allowing too much air into the bottle over time, spoiling the wine essentially. So the next thing we do, especially for big, full-bodied cabs like this from the Napa Valley, is we always want to decant a wine. And the reason we want to decant a wine is that we want it to open up. We want this wine to have a relationship with the air around it. So by opening up your wine, it changes flavors dramatically over time.
Scott, what's absolutely incredible is you really get the aromas coming out of a decanter, out of the bottle. It's incredible.
It's one of those things where a wine such as this, it just leaps out of the bottle. The room wants to smell this wine. And so while you're decanting, what you want to do is you want to hold off and go slow at the end. What I'm doing is I'm looking right here in the bottle, in the neck of the bottle, looking for any sediment. So what happens with red wine over time, is it loses color. But with white wine over time, it gains color. This is a 2020 vintage, so I'm not too worried about sediment in this bottle. But if this was a 1990 vintage of wine, over time, some of those tannins will get stripped and sinked right to the side, leaving a lot of sediment on the side of the bottle. We don't want that to end up in the decanter.
Right.
So that's why I just slowed down off of this. But without further ado,
How long should we wait before we...
under an ideal situation, I would decant this wine, set it aside, wait an hour, 45 minutes, come back to it at that. Really cool experiment at home. Pour wine into a decanter, pour a glass, and then set it aside. And then revisit this wine an hour later, and it will be totally different.
You know, I guess that's why we have guests that call you, like, hey, well in advance to say, Scott, I'm going to have this bottle of wine. Can you please have it decanted for my 7:30 reservation?
Scott, I want a bottle of Barolo. Can you open it up at 5:30? I'll be there at 7. Happens all the time, and for a specific reason. So Chris, without further ado, let's taste this. Shall we? Always pour your guests first. There we are. Beautiful.
Wow. This is absolutely tremendous. Wow. Thank you, Scott. That's incredible wine.
You're welcome, Chris.
Yeah.
I knew you'd like it.
Can't wait till next week. What are you going to introduce next week?
Well, if I got introduced anything next week, we're going to be doing Champagne next.
Perfect.
One of my favorite wine regions, and the thing about Champagne, it's perfect any time of the day, any time of the year. You should always have a bottle of champagne in your fridge because you never know when you're going to need to celebrate.
You're gonna show me a Dom Perignon, aren't you?
You betcha.
Excellent. Are you sure not Spumante Bambino?
Absolutely not.
Scott, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Chris.